I am Maya Johnson, 29 years old, and 2 weeks ago at my grandmother's funeral, my uncle Darnell announced he was selling Grandma Pearl's Chicago brownstone to pay off his son's cocaine debts. His wife Vanessa smiled and told the packed church Pearl would want us to help family in need. Maya's got her nursing job. She'll be just fine on her own. Standing there in my grandmother's church, I felt like I'd been slapped. But what they didn't know was that Grandma Pearl had left something behind that would change everything. An envelope with my name on it, and inside, the key to a secret she'd kept hidden for 30 years. The call came at 2:15 a.m. on a Sunday in October. I was in my studio apartment on Chicago's South Side, studying for my ICU certification exam. Uncle Darnell's name lit up my phone screen. Maya, honey, you need to get to Northwestern Memorial right now. Your grandmother collapsed at church. I threw on scrubs and drove through empty streets, my heart hammering against my ribs. When I got to the ER, I found my cousin Deshawn already there, pacing in designer Jordan sneakers and a gold chain. He'd somehow beaten me there from Naperville, 45 minutes away. Where is she? I asked. Deshawn just shook his head. She's gone, cuz. Had a massive stroke during evening service. Pastor Williams said she went peaceful. I sank into one of those uncomfortable plastic chairs. Grandma Pearl, who'd raised me from age 8 when my parents died in a car accident. Grandma Pearl, who'd worked double shifts as a hospital custodian to keep food on our table. Gone. The last conversation we'd had was 3 days earlier. She'd called to ask if I was eating enough, if I needed anything, if the studying was going okay. I'd rushed her off the phone because I was tired from a 12-hour shift. I didn't know it would be the last time I'd hear her voice. Uncle Darnell arrived 20 minutes later with his wife Vanessa, both dressed like they'd been out somewhere expensive. My poor mother, Darnell said, pulling me into a performance hug. At least she's not suffering anymore. But I noticed he'd been out at 2 a.m. while his 82-year-old mother was alone. To understand what happened at that funeral, you need to understand my family. Uncle Darnell was Grandma Pearl's only child, my father's younger brother. After my parents died, he was supposed to help raise me, but he was too busy with get-rich-quick schemes to bother with a grieving 8-year-old. I was smart on a roll, science fair winner. Grandma Pearl used to brag about me. My Maya's going to be a doctor someday, she'd say. That girl's got healing hands. Meanwhile, Deshawn was already showing signs of trouble. Skipping school, hanging with the wrong crowd, coming home with expensive things he couldn't explain. But Vanessa always made excuses. Boys will be boys, she'd tell Grandma Pearl. Deshawn just needs to find his way. When college time came, I had my acceptance letter to Northwestern's nursing program and a partial scholarship. I needed $15,000 more. Uncle Darnell and Vanessa were visiting that day. Vanessa picked up my acceptance letter and set it down like it was nothing. Nursing school? Maya, honey, that's a lot of money for a job that'll have you on your feet all day. She turned to Grandma Pearl. Deshawn's talking about business school. Now that's an investment that'll pay off for the whole family. I looked at my grandmother, waiting for her to speak up for me. She was quiet for a long moment, then said firmly, Maya's going to nursing school. We'll figure out the money. That same year, Deshawn got a full ride to DePaul through Uncle Darnell's construction business connections. He also got a brand new Camaro for his 18th birthday. I got a job at the hospital cafeteria and worked weekends at a dry cleaner's. 4 years of 16-hour days, studying in break rooms, choosing textbooks over new clothes. I graduated with my RN degree and 0 debt, while Deshawn flunked out junior year. That's when I learned the phrase that would haunt me. Sons inherit the family legacy. Granddaughters are just temporary blessings. Uncle Darnell said it whenever anyone questioned why Deshawn got chance after chance while I earned everything twice over. The morning after Grandma Pearl died, I drove back to the brownstone for the first time in 6 months. Deshawn's black Escalade was parked out front, rims gleaming. The same Escalade he'd somehow afforded despite being unemployed. Uncle Darnell met me at the door. Long time no see, Mike. You look tired. This nursing thing is wearing you down. Inside, the living room was cluttered with expensive electronics still in boxes. A 75-inch TV, PlayStation 5, sound system. Louis Vuitton bags were stacked in the hallway. Where's Aunt Vanessa? I asked. Upstairs handling funeral arrangements. You know how women are with these things. My old bedroom had been converted into Deshawn's storage unit. Designer luggage, shoeboxes, gaming setup with multiple monitors. Everything I'd grown up with was gone, replaced by things he couldn't afford. Uncle Darnell appeared behind me. Deshawn needed the space. You've got your own place anyway. No point keeping a shrine to childhood, right? The funeral was scheduled for Saturday. I handled the logistics funeral home, obituary, flowers, programs. Uncle Darnell handled the image management, appearing with practiced grief whenever church members visited. Thank you so much for thinking of my mother, he'd say. She loved this community. As her son, I just want to honour her memory properly. But behind closed doors, things were different. I noticed hushed conversations between Uncle Darnell and Vanessa that stopped when I entered rooms. On Thursday night, I heard Deshawn on his phone in the backyard. I know, man. Just give me until next week. After Saturday, my pops will have everything sorted. The old lady left us everything. A pause. No, don't come to the house. My family's here for the funeral. My dad's got it handled. When he saw me, he hung up immediately. Who was that? I asked. Nobody. Just work stuff. Deshawn hadn't worked in months. The night before the funeral, I couldn't sleep. I went through Grandma Pearl's bedroom, untouched since she went to the hospital. In her cedar chest, I found old photos, my school reports, and a manila envelope marked, "For Maya only." Inside was a key and a letter dated 3 months ago. My dear Maya. It began, "If you're reading this, then I'm gone. And it's time you knew the truth." The key opens a safety deposit box at First National Bank downtown. Box 447. Everything you need to know is inside. Don't tell Darnell or Vanessa until you understand what you're dealing with. They believe they're entitled to everything, simply because Darnell is my son. But blood doesn't always determine who deserves what. I love you more than words can say. Grandma Pearl. I stared at the letter, my hands shaking. When I asked Aunt Vanessa about it the next morning, she dismissed it immediately. Oh, that old thing. She closed that account years ago. Don't waste your time, honey. But something in her tone told me she was lying. The funeral was at Greater Mount Zion Baptist Church, where Grandma Pearl had sung in the choir for 37 years. Nearly 60 people came to pay respects. Uncle Darnell delivered the eulogy in a custom-tailored suit, speaking about Grandma Pearl like they'd been best friends. My mother was a woman of substance, he said. She believed in family, in legacy. As her son, I promised to honour that vision. I sat listening to stories that sounded beautiful but felt hollow. After the final hymn, people started gathering to leave. But then Uncle Darnell stepped back to the podium. If I could have everyone's attention for just one more moment. The sanctuary grew quiet. Our family has been talking about moving forward, Uncle Darnell said. As my mother's son and primary heir, I've decided we need to sell the family home. It's too much to maintain, and frankly, we need resources for pressing family obligations. He paused, then added, we've also decided to sell my mother's jewellery collection. My stomach dropped. Maya and I have discussed this as a family, Uncle Darnell said, looking at me. As her son, this responsibility falls to me. And Maya understands. She's built her own independent life. I had never discussed anything with him. I started to stand, but Aunt Vanessa grabbed my wrist. Don't you dare cause a scene in God's house, she whispered. Uncle Darnell continued, I know some might wonder about Maya's situation. She lived with my mother longer than anyone. 60 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Aunt Vanessa stood smoothly. I want to address that, she said. Maya is independent. She has a good job, her own apartment, but she's not Darnell's child. The house, the legacy that belongs to Darnell as Pearl's son, someone whispered. Well, that makes sense. The son should inherit his mother's property. Pearl would want her son to have security, Aunt Vanessa said. Maya's young. She can build her own legacy. I felt the words hit like physical blows. In front of 60 people who'd watched me grow up, they'd announced I didn't deserve anything. Sister Washington patted my hand. Honey, they're right. Your uncle is Pearl's blood. I wanted to scream about the years I'd worked 2 jobs while Deshawn partied, the nights I'd stayed up with Grandma Pearl while Uncle Darnell built his business. But I didn't. I just sat there, feeling smaller than ever. After the service, I sat in my car watching Uncle Darnell shake hands with a man in an expensive suit. I recognized him Jerome Miller, a real estate investor. Uncle Darnell had brought a buyer to Grandma Pearl's funeral. That's when I decided to skip the repast and drive to First National Bank. In the basement safety deposit box area, I showed them Grandma Pearl's key. Inside box 447 were documents I'd never seen. Property deeds, insurance policies, bank statements, and a folder labelled Maya's Inheritance. The first document made my hands shake. A trust agreement dated 30 years ago. Grandma Pearl had created the Maya Johnson Educational and Security Trust when I was born. The trust owned everything. The brownstone, the jewellery collection, a savings portfolio worth over $200,000, even a rental property I'd never known existed. But the most important document was another letter. My dearest Maya, it read, I've been watching my son expect inheritance simply because he's male. But I didn't work 40 years to watch everything get gambled away. Darnell is my son, and I love him, but he's never understood sacrifice. You have. You know what it means to earn something, to protect something precious. Everything I have is yours. It always has been. I set up this trust when your parents died because I knew you were special. Don't let them take what's rightfully yours. You are my heart, Maya. You are my real legacy. All my love, Grandma Pearl. I sat in that bank basement, surrounded by documents proving my grandmother had been planning for my future since I was orphaned, and cried harder than I had since my parents died. I drove straight to Marcus Thompson's office, the estate attorney mentioned in Grandma Pearl's letter. He was a dignified man in his 60s. When I showed him the papers, his face lit up. I've been waiting for this call, he said. Your grandmother was very specific about her wishes and concerned about her son's assumptions. Everything is ironclad, Miss Johnson. The trust has been properly maintained. Your uncle has no legal claim to any of it. They don't know, I said. They think everything belongs to Uncle Darnell as the son. That's exactly what your grandmother expected. She said, Darnell thinks being male makes him deserve what I've worked for, but Maya earned it by being the granddaughter who stayed. The house was worth $400,000. The jewellery collection, $85,000. The rental property brought in $1,200 monthly. Combined with savings, I was looking at over $700,000 in assets. What do you want to do? Marcus asked. I thought about being humiliated at the funeral, about Uncle Darnell's confident assertions about his rights as the son. I want them to know the truth, I said. In front of the same people they embarrassed me in front of. Marcus scheduled a formal estate reading for Wednesday at 2 p.m, inviting everyone from the funeral. I arrived early at Marcus's office. Uncle Darnell came first, wearing another expensive suit, taking the head of the table like he was chairing the meeting. Thanks for setting this up, Mr. Thompson, Uncle Darnell said. Let's make this quick. We've got a buyer coming tomorrow. Other family and church friends filed in, 20 people total. Marcus began with standard formalities, then opened Grandma Pearl's will. Pearl Johnson's will is quite comprehensive, he said. Let me begin with her specific bequests. Small items first. Bible to Pastor Williams. China to Sister Washington. Uncle Darnell leaned back confidently. And now, Marcus said, we come to the primary estate. The house at 1847 South King Drive goes to... Marcus paused. Maya Johnson, as primary beneficiary of the Maya Johnson Educational and Security Trust. Complete silence. What? Uncle Darnell's voice cracked. That's impossible. I'm her son. I'm the primary heir. Furthermore, Marcus continued, the jewellery collection also goes to Maya Johnson, as specified in the trust agreement. Uncle Darnell shot up, face flushing red. This is impossible. Sons inherit from their mothers. That's how it works. Marcus pulled out documents spanning 3 decades. Your mother created this trust in 1994 when Maya was orphaned. She has been the sole beneficiary for 30 years. She manipulated her, Uncle Darnell shouted. Mum was confused. Maya took advantage. The trust was created when Miss Johnson was 8 years old, Marcus replied calmly. It's been updated multiple times, most recently 6 months ago when your mother was in perfect mental health. I sat quietly, watching 30 years of assumptions crumble. There's more, Marcus said. The trust also includes a rental property, savings portfolio worth $127,000, and monthly income of $1,200. Sister Washington gasped. Pearl had all that. Mrs. Johnson worked multiple jobs and invested wisely. She wanted to ensure Maya's security after being orphaned so young. Uncle Darnell's composure cracked completely. 38 years, he said, voice shaking. I'm her son. I took care of her business, and she left everything to the granddaughter who lived with her, who took care of her daily, who stayed close, I said, standing slowly. I never assumed I deserved anything just because of gender or blood relation. I turned to Uncle Darnell. You spent my childhood talking about sons inheriting legacy. You never asked what Grandma Pearl actually wanted. Your grandmother knew about Deshawn's drug problem, Marcus said gently. She chose to protect her assets rather than enable destructive behavior. How much does he owe? Pastor Williams asked. I looked at Deshawn. Based on phone calls I overheard, I said around $50,000 to drug dealers. The room erupted in gasps. This is why your mother made the choices she did, Marcus told Uncle Darnell. She loved you, but believed in protecting what she'd worked for. 6 months later, I was sitting on the front porch of my grandmother's house, watching the Chicago sunset. The same porch where Grandma Pearl and I used to shell peas and talk about my future. I'd moved back into the brownstone, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Uncle Darnell had stopped speaking to me. The last thing he'd said was, "You stole my inheritance." He couldn't understand. You can't steal what was never yours. Aunt Vanessa moved to Atlanta. Before leaving, she'd said, I hope you can live with what you've done to this family. I can live with honoring what Grandma Pearl wanted, I'd replied. Deshawn was in a California rehabilitation program, 90 days inpatient. I'd paid for it because Grandma Pearl would have wanted me to help if he was serious about changing. I converted the basement into a study space, working on my nurse practitioner degree online. The rental income covered my expenses, and for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't worried about money. Sister Washington visited every Sunday. She'd been the first to apologize after the estate reading. Your grandmother knew what she was doing, she'd said. I should have trusted her judgment. I wore Grandma Pearl's jewelry, daily pearl earrings to work, ruby brooch to church, gold bracelet when I wanted to feel connected to the women before me. But the most precious thing was a photo tucked in the trust documents, me at nursing school graduation, Grandma Pearl beaming beside me. On the back, she'd written, My Maya, the healer. Everything I did was for this moment. I used to think being orphaned meant I didn't have real family, but Grandma Pearl taught me differently. Family isn't just about DNA. It's about who chooses you, who invests in your future, who sees your potential. She never told me I was her favorite, but she made me her heir. She never said I was more important than her son, but she structured her entire estate around my security. That was her way of saying, I choose you, in a language that would outlast her presence. I'm not going to pretend everything is perfect. I still miss having a traditional extended family. Wish Uncle Darnell and I could rebuild our relationship. But some relationships were built on false assumptions about hierarchy and entitlement. What I have instead is security, independence, and knowledge that the most important person in my childhood saw exactly who I was and chose to bet everything on my future, not because of gender or blood relation, but because I had proven worthy of her trust through my actions, character, and love. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If you've ever felt overlooked because of gender expectations, if you've been told sons inherit while daughters just get by, I want you to know your worth isn't determined by old-fashioned ideas about inheritance. Sometimes the people who love us best show it in ways we don't recognize until later. Sometimes the most important love works quietly behind the scenes, building a foundation no one can take away. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe. Until next time, remember legacy isn't about bloodlines. It's about who chooses to invest in your future and who you choose to honor with your choices.